Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto got harem with Tsunade female Kyuubi and Hinata, part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. He felt drained, physically, spiritually, just everything actually. He felt the rush, being thrown somewhere at high speeds. Feeling the pulses of pain shoot up his body, the stinging and burning sensations appeared across multiple points on him. He knew he came to a stop. The seemingly simple task of opening his eyes to inspect his surroundings was a monumental objective. Naruto's eyes fluttered open, like timid agonizingly slow opening of doors. It was then when he realized that he was soaked to the bone. Rain had been pouring down on him. The obvious thing was that he had been laying down in the mud for hours, unless it was raining hell. Drained was what he felt. He lifted his head to inspect his body, but that act was too tiresome to attempt any more than a few seconds. He was content with simply staring at the bright gray sky, a few rays of golden light escaping through. He had been told that this jutsu was dangerous, too unpredictable. An attempt might mean his life. It was worth it, just for a small chance, no matter how pitiful it was. It was not like he had anything to return to. Killer Bee took that chance too. He must be in a similar state somewhere nearby. He felt only capable of simple non-demanding movements. Flinches of toes and fingers or brief second movement from his legs or arms. He never felt so exhausted in his life, feeling nothing came close to the fatigue he felt now. He heard the patter of rain land on his forehead, rest was out of the question. Yet, if he fell asleep would he die? It might be possible, yet he didn't care. He might drifted in and out of unconsciousness, but he would never fully know that. He felt a raging battle of wills begin to settle within him. To merely lie still and accept oblivion, or fight with nearly every last ounce of his strength. One of them seemed such a wonderful prospect. He continued to entertain the idea. All this thinking made him tired than ever. He was in a dream-like state, debating whether anything else was real. A single word formed continuously: act. Act. Kurama. Kurama. The only sound was the thunderous roars in the simmering skies above. The melancholic sky shifted. The overall grayness formed into a steel ceiling, tinted red for whatever reason. The yellow rays turned into the rusted pipes sprawling the sides of the walls. It took a moment to discern that he was inside the giant fox's seal. He was still laying in the water and even he felt tired inside. The giant gate was still open, that unspoken form of trust between them. He crawled toward the gate, until the dark within was vaguely illuminated for him. There he saw Kurama laid within, and even he knew that the proud Nine Tails himself was drained of chakra. Deep, loud breathing was heard, a state of sleep. Yet, when he called out there was no answer. He reached a hand out. Just a little chakra, enough for me to get somewhere. He wasn't sure if Kurama gifted it for him, or whether he took it. Yet, he felt himself absorbing the small source of chakra. A pleasant source pooled inside of him. His mind cleared slightly from the source of energy. He was cold, shivering from all the time spent in the gravel and rain. The sky seemed darker than before, his surroundings only partially lit. He was near a wall of rock, and observed a small crawl space where he might recover for the time being. He needed chakra, and weakly reflected upon absorbing natural energy. He decided against it however, feeling that the pitiful amount of chakra he had would be overwhelmed from the more powerful unstable source. He attempted to move his limbs, finding them more compliant than before. He was missing no limbs nor did he feel any different than before, other than the general heaviness. He could only ponder about the mystery about why he felt so empty. He should have regained some chakra by now, Perhaps Kurama being out had something to do with it. Even his Uzumaki genes should have helped, if his mother seemed so certain of it. He tried to stand, but that was an impossibility. Come on. You've faced harder stuff before. He couldn't, however, and knew it was precious waste of his energy. Crawling, however, was something in the realm of possibility. He committed to a slow crawl towards a safe haven, to get dry and recover. One hand placed after the another, his feet and knees digging into crackling gravel. He was unconcerned about how much time had passed when he reached the small crawl space. Hardly large enough to cover him and the backpack he had. The small hole in the wall was dry, however. He tiredly discarded his soaked clothes and opened his pack to find numerous supplies for different situations. He pulled out a thermal blanket, along with a special coated stick to light a fire that would last for hours and provide some little heat. He forced himself to snack on some food he had brought, even that made him tired. When he finished, he devoted himself to rest. Sometimes, he would awake in pitch black, where nothing could be seen, and all-consuming darkness. Only, the sounds of falling rain made him at ease, reassuring him that he hadn't passed on. There would be light out at times, and he would continue to eat whatever food he found to regain his strength. He wasn't certain if hours passed, or whether it was days. The only thing he could discern was that he slept a lot. Each time he awoke, he still felt that perpetual exhaustion. Much like the rain, which gave no indication of stopping. It might have stopped at some points in his sleep only to resume, it didn't help his passage of time. Every time he awoke, he found himself less delirious. It became apparent that he was alone, he saw no sight of his fellow companion. Damn, where are you, Octopops? Then, finally, Kurama stirred from his slumber. Naruto. Finding himself in the familiar walls once again. One of his last remaining companions, a giant nine-tailed fox. Hey, you're awake, Naruto tiredly reflected. He was sitting down within the seal staring at Kurama. It gave a massive yawn, baring its fangs as it did so. How long? It stretched its limbs out, but still stayed in the same position. He didn't know how to answer that. If I know, I've been waking and passing out, it could have been days or hours. Kurama looked perplexed, his deep imposing voice bellowing in the air. You've got hardly any chakra, the same could be said of myself. How much do you think? It might have been 2 days, at the very least, he replied. If it's been that long we should have been back to full power. Hearing the damaged pride in his voice was almost funny if it didn't affect him too. I know. It's like, I don't know, my chakra recovery had been disrupted. But we're still getting some of it back, more slowly maybe. I was so exhausted I probably would have died if I didn't take some of your chakra to get inside here. He was quiet then, and Kurama seemed to know a question he was dying to ask. There was a silence before it roared loudly. It better have worked. I hope so too. His mind was bothered, however. If it truly had been a few days since he arrived, he still felt the chakra exhaustion. It was like overworking himself to the state of just plainly passing out. The difference was that he still felt it days after, when normally a day of rest was enough. You said it would painless. It wasn't that at all. I said dying would have been painless, Kurama spoke again. The jutsu required colossal amounts of chakra, we also heavily distorted time and space. Those are some possible factors with some consequences. It could have taken some of your vitality and with the space and time disrupted our chakra regeneration. Theories obviously. What's expected with lower vitality is shortened age expectancy and stamina. Oh. Well, that sucks. What else was he supposed to respond with? There was nothing said for a long while as he processed this information. The more he thought about his predicament just made it feel funny. He chuckled once, in relief, and many other mixtures of emotion. It evolved into a full-blown laughter. A deep throaty, almost maniacal kind of laugh. It continued until his chest hurt and it got difficult to breathe. He started to pant until Kurama broke the silence. I think it might have up your mind too, kid. No, no. Hey, I'm fine. Just glad. He looked over to the rain following chaotically to the earth. He sighed sorrowfully. Flashes of those days before echoed in his mind. He had placed a self-imposed mission on himself, now he had to make certain that he would complete it. Even after that, there's nothing that will stop me, if it's true then I'll just adapt to it. You know what, Kurama, thank you, there's nothing I can do to appreciate what you helped accomplish. Kurama just looked at him, his ear twitching. Shut up, idiot. He still heard the gratitude and welcome in his voice. Kurama also detested the genjutsu-placed world. It sat wrong with the both of them. The plan was to stop Obito when he revealed himself when he broke Kurama out when he was born. The day began to darken, signaling the end of day. We'll go when it get brighter out. He didn't get a response, but it didn't matter. He had to find a specific date first before any more rest could be made. How much time he had left to wait. He opened his eyes to find that daylight had broke out. He had promised himself, so he had no choice but to force himself to get up. His black and orange jacket had completely been decimated in the war. So he wore a hooded red jacket, a thick orange stripe on his sleeves. He had taken it from an empty store. He lucked out since it had a hood, protection from the seemingly unending rain. He shuffled through his bag, finding the week's worth of food he had stored were practically gone. It might have been an indicator at how much he slept, or just how much he ate. That wasn't counting on the ramen he brought with him, which he had a few for breakfast. He walked out, still feeling tender and exhaustion. He spotted some tracks from where he had landed. He could see some marks of the several places he had fallen and had skipped across from where he originally landed. He found a road nearby, and decided to take a random direction and set himself on the path. Where's Octopops? Maybe back where he was at this time, you wouldn't exist yet, still in your mother's belly. I don't want to hear about that. He shivered and focused on walking. We'll have to meet up with him eventually somehow. The longer the time passed by, he noticed, the more he grew anxious. The landscape, and the weather all pointed out that he wasn't anywhere near the land of fire. It was all too unfamiliar, he couldn't recognize any sort of surroundings. It became apparent that he did not wind up anywhere near the Leaf Village. Especially after when he saw a sign that pointed towards a town he didn't recognize. He rubbed the nape of his neck, wondering how much time he had left until Obito made his appearance. He pressed on towards the site of the town, to find any indication on his whereabouts. He once again heard the rumbling of the thunder overhead, which oddly, didn't really sound like thunder at all. He focused on the sound, the unnatural length and randomness of it. His anxiety strengthened, realizing that it was distant explosions sounding beyond. His pace quickened, slow steps into a jog. The faster he got to the town and figured out where he was, the better. His eyesight caught a scuffle being exchanged in the center of the road. A smaller figure with a more larger one. He sprinted as fast as he can towards the two. The rain gliding past him. No, it's mine. Hearing the cries of a girl. The larger one harshly kicked her in the stomach, knocking her to the ground. He ransacked the pack that had fallen, clutching it desperately. Get the hell away from her. As Naruto flung a small stone directly at the figure and hitting him squarely in the head. He was knocked over, yelling obscenities. He picked himself back up, clutching his skull as he stared at the direction the stone was thrown. Naruto placed himself into a stance in preparation for a fight. Suddenly, the guy cowered and ran for his life, discarding the pack in his haste. He took a deep breath, feeling almost slightly worn out from the running and sprinting. A fight with another shinobi would likely tire him out. Confident that the person wasn't going to return, he walked past the whimpering girl to pick up the pack. He found nothing of interest in the pack, some empty wrappers and an half-full water bottle. He closed it and returned to the girl and dropped it in front of her. She wore a large dark blue hood that hid her face. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. She made no attempt to speak and only the rain was left to fill the void. "Why yes," so quietly he almost didn't catch it. "Good. I got your bag back." He kneeled down and shook it in front of her to prove his point. She made no attempt to grab it, and continued to sit in the mud. He rubbed the nape of his neck, wondering what he should do. The right thing was to ensure her safety before he continued on his way. If there was something that mostly cheered him up, it was ramen. It had been a while since he had eaten, and the girl might know the specific date. There was still a large distance from the town, so it would certainly shorten the time. "Hey, do you want to give some hot ramen?" He pulled up 2 cups of ramen, extending one so that she could see it. Having chosen not to reveal herself. "That always makes my day, might just be me though." He had heard a gasp, and a flash of her blue hair appeared briefly. She reached out to grab it, only to hesitate. Are you sure?" Hearing the anticipation and fear in her voice made him frown. "Of course. Why wouldn't I?" he asked incredulously still. Ramen was to be eaten with some hot water. "Come on, let's get out of the rain and eat this." He inspected his surroundings and found the nearest tree large enough to shield them from the rain. It was close enough to the road. She was still staying in the same spot as he made a small fire to boil the water. Her gaze looking to where he was. "Aren't ya coming?" he asked. She picked up her bag and made her way. He heated up a metal canteen bottle he carried to boil it. All his gear was made for camping out, to hide away until the time was right. He also had some ryo to replenish them. Up until October 10th. She sat across from him as they waited for the water to boil. Another strained silence filled between the duo. "What's your name?" "Mine's Naruto." "Conan," she replied. He knew that name, Nagato's comrade. It was a coincidence he guessed. She didn't seem to be much of a talker either, so he asked another question. "So where are your parents?" "They're gone," she replied somberly. "I'm alone," she added silently, before he got the chance to ask another question. "She's an orphan like you." Kurama stated. He started to feel this uneasy looming feeling settle over him. The things he saw and hints that didn't occur in his own time. Stealing from kids. Random explosions. Orphans. What is this? The water finally finished and he shakily filled their ramen cups. He was hesitant to ask his next question. "Seems like war to me." Hearing the snarky reply from Kurama, which wasn't very appreciated. "War?" he questioned aloud, more to Kurama than to Conan, who nodded her head in response. Another, longer, strained silence. "Do you know the date?" he asked, fearfully. She heard her mumble it, and he chose not to believe it. Yet everything pointed to the contrary. It was only confirmed when Conan pulled her hood back, revealing her facial features. He'd recognized her anywhere. Her features were less pronounced, less mature than her older counterpart. There was no mistaking that they were both the same. Her clear amber eyes along with the short blue hair. "Are you okay?" she asked. His stomach dropped. His breathing began to go ragged, quick and fast. His vision began to blur, darkening. He felt his own despair and panic, all chaotically swimming around in his head far too fast for him to handle. He mumbled an answer, one he wasn't exactly sure of. He knew this feeling, one that had happened to him before. "Naruto, you need to calm down," hearing Kurama shouting loudly. He barely registered it. They had traveled way too far. Years before he was supposed to be born, it wasn't even close. Panic continued to grip him. It was like his final act of failure. You moron, we can still accomplish everything we set out to do. His words helped slightly, yet the nonsensible thoughts continued to race through his brain. He attempted to fight it, taking deep breaths to combat it. We can still do it, we can. He repeated like a mantra. His heart still beat feverishly, he was exhausted once again. Sleep was what he desired the most right now. Now that your pitiful human emotions calmed down, you should follow that girl. The one with Rinnegan will eventually show up. We will change things eventually if we do. He couldn't particularly think clearly, so he was thankful for Kurama's guidance. Okay, I got it. Like everything will never happen right. Time had certainly passed, that's for sure. Whether or not he cared was up in the air. He had laid down on the grass, merely listening to whatever sounds that were being made. Like the smooth applause of thunder, the droplets hitting the ground, or Conan snacking on her second cup of ramen. She ate heartedly, eating the noodles with gusto. He might have been happy about that if it wasn't obvious that she was starving. She looked rather content with stuffing her face with food. He faced the sky again, the occasional drop that landed on his face that the tree couldn't block. He had spoken at length with Kurama about various subjects. Because of the massive inaccuracy of the time-traveling technique, as well as the huge requirement of chakra, using it again would likely make their situation worse than it was. With the absence of Killer Bee and the current state of war, it was likely that the Eight Tails container wasn't anywhere near his village. So Conan, how old are you? He asked. 13. It was a bit surprising. Geez, were we that small when I was her age? He distinctly remembered being one of the shortest ones before he traveled with the perverted sage. Oh, well, I'm 17, well, very recently too. That's nice, you're practically grown up, huh? She asked. He looked over to her, eating the ramen she held. I guess, but you're older than your age, right? She looked down at her soup, ignoring his question. He was correct, however. Even his fourth shinobi war made feel much older than he was. He was a participant, and some of the things he had witnessed would never leave his mind. He was a shinobi, however. From what little he had known, Conan and the others were just plain civilians. An orphan from the war. Do you want some juice and another cup of ramen? He asked, finally sitting up. She smiled slightly. A bit weird. The Conan he knew was significantly more serious, filled with even more loss and hardships. He could never have pictured her smiling. He brought out the ramen and the last juice box for Conan, heating up more water for his favorite food. It's been so long since I ate this much juice too, I could never get this. She commented rather happily. It was almost a shock to him. Nagato had described their conditions. All the death, the orphans, the lack of food. It was different to witness it firsthand. He ate to merely settle his stomach. So Conan, were you heading towards that town? He asked. The rain had finally settled in its ferocity. There was the slight misty rain, but that was the best that the land of rain could do. I was, she answered hesitantly. How about we go together? Two is always better than one. He looked forward, towards where the town lay. He guessed he had to lie. Telling people he was from the future would give some unwanted attention. If anyone would have believed him. She looked perplexed at the question. We just met. Sure we did, we're both orphans. So we both already understand each other a bit. He looked around awkwardly. I mean, I have this dream I want to fulfill. It took a big back step, and I have a small idea on where to start. You see, I want the world to live in peace. I'll do whatever in my power to accomplish that ideal, but I really can't do it alone. So I'll need comrades, people I can trust and help me. You want to create peace. No fighting. She had an odd look in her face. Definitely. I'm no moron. Hopefully. He ignored Kurama's remark. Doing things on my own will be impossible. Why are you asking me? She asked. Well, to start, I have this good feeling about you. I think you'd be a really skilled kunoichi, not much of a feeling if he knew about it. He had heard of her skill by some who had seen her. She was also a part of the Akatsuki. So Conan, would you like to learn how to become a kunoichi, to fight and defend yourself? To join me in trying bring peace and understanding to this world? I'm thankful for what you did, really. I have nothing against you, it's just I'd much rather not trust every person I meet. Even though I just did accept your food. She looked like she was ashamed of herself. How desperation pushes you. Cautious, smart, probably more so than you, hearing Kurama comment. That's exactly what I mean, you're smart, it's how you survive. Hell, I got lucky I got someone to teach me how to fight. I'm extending the same courtesy the old man gave me. You want to teach me how to fight? She asked. Yeah, even if you don't want to help me find cooperation between everyone, that's okay too. You can go whenever you like. She was in deep thought. I know it's very silly to ask, but can you promise me that you'll stop all this fighting? That's my word, I can never allow myself to back out on it. I know you don't trust me just yet, but I sincerely hope we can be friends eventually. Friends always have each other's back, he said rather proudly. She stared for a long while. I guess. There always have to be some sort of trust, even in yourself to get something done right. Quote. He smiled. Well, then, how about we get going towards the town then? Naruto looked around as he walked through the town. The market had little number of people going through. The town was moderately sized, probably housing several thousand people. It seemed like AIM liked to compact their towns, as many buildings were several stories high. He looked into his bag, which he had filled with food along with Conan's. He pocketed the rest of his money into his own frog wallet. This money will last us a little while. He thought of the possibilities of how to obtain more food later on. Apparently no one was hiring or looking for help, as an orphan was kicked out of the store by a shopkeeper. The orphan had complained that it was the last place to try and make money. Other shops seemed to be closing, from lack of business or moving somewhere safer. He wanted to help, but Kurama had said to leave him be, since sooner or later they too would be in that position. They would have to steal when they ran out. He enjoyed a half of a popsicle, the other half he had given to Conan. It was a slightly expensive to even buy. I don't remember how sweets tasted like, she said rather happily. He looked around the town he was in, it was in pretty bad shape. The war hadn't reached here yet, but the numerous homeless, refugees and orphans was staggering when they had first entered. They seemed to have set up camp at the edge of town. It was much less so when they entered the market district. The Fourth War was much different than this. He cursed at his laziness over not paying attention at the academy. He only really paid attention to his father's exploits, which only happened in the Third Shinobi War. He recalled Nagato saying that the war was waged only for money and expanding territory, and that AIM was at the epicenter at the three warring nations. Some AIM shinobi passed by, looked fidgety and nervous as they looked around quickly. It made him anxious, knowing that he held the hidden leaf headband in his own pack. There was no way he was going to get rid of it, a precious gift from Aruka. Even if the original cloth was wrecked, the metal band had sentimental value. Okay, find Yahiko and Nagato and then the perverted sage, then. Well, he supposed he could cross that bridge when he got to that stage. He had also bought a small tent for Conan, stored within a ceiling scroll. He yawned. It was nearing dusk as the orange in this distance showed. He and Conan were nearly outside the town. He spotted many beggars and camping refugees along the outside walls of the village. He stopped, seeing the tree line in the distance. He stood directly outside the gates, and a feeling crawled up his spine. The sobbing of a toddler stopped, and all he heard was his own breathing. Conan questioned him, but he couldn't hear it. He saw several aimed shinobi standing guard over the refugees, suddenly casting glances towards the tree line. He heard the branches being swept aside, the piercing of leaves. There was many, straight and with a target in mind. A volley of kunai and ninja tools pierced through the brush of the forest. He spotted the trailing pieces of paper behind them, hissing ferociously. Shinobi leapt out from the trees and were already making their way. There was so many innocents around him, all about to be caught in between. He didn't have to think about it, he acted upon instinct, to protect them. He called upon his companion's chakra, and he felt the power swell within him. He extended his arms, a larger and further reaching limbs appeared, catching the thrown kunai. Remembering the smaller and untrained Conan, he turned to her, shouting to run. Her eyes wide open, she flinched from the violent explosions and he felt the vibrations course through his bones. Muted screams pierced the air, and the people began to flee for their lives. Running through the gate that was present, he saw Conan beginning to follow the crowd before he turned his attention to the trees. His shut off the connection to Kurama's chakra as a shinobi reached him. He ducked beneath an attempted slash. Naruto kicked him in the ribs and he flew back in the attacking force's ranks. 3 more replaced the one and engaged him. He went pale when he saw their headbands. The leaf symbol engraved on their steel plates. Defending himself, he swiftly and skillfully evaded a punch before delivering an elbow hit to his attacker's face. He tripped in another one with a sweeping kick. On his own knee, he captured a fist aimed for him, and he was quickly caught in a struggle. He broke free by kneeing him in the stomach. Before anything else could be done, he was launched away by a jet of water. Catching himself in the air, he rolled on the hard concrete road before he quickly used his momentum for a running start. He shook his dizziness away as sprinted away. He looked behind him, some leaf shinobi trying to intercept. The pitiful amount of guards were already overwhelmed, but more aimed shinobi came to help. His pursuers were stopped by the reinforcements. He sprinted, reaching a decent speed as he passed by panicked civilians trying to distance themselves over the inevitable battle over the town. Naruto desperately searched for Conan as he heard many explosions sound around him. Some leaf shinobi had already infiltrated, engaged in a battle and causing destruction around them. Her well-being was his priority. He felt the blood flow quickly in his veins as adrenaline coursed through him. He already saw several people laying motionless on the streets, explosions echoing, destroying his surroundings, rubble falling from above as they struck several innocents. He saw the leaping forms of shinobi jumping over the roofs of buildings. The wail of an alarm blasted through speakers hung around the streets, adding to the chaos. He shielded his face as an explosion sent debris firing across the street. Children and villagers alike screamed in terror as they ran away from the conflict, only to meet more ninja clashing with one another. He heard a roar, crackling and crumbling as he noticed a building began to lean vicariously. The crowd began to disperse near the leaning frame of concrete, several people stumbled and fell. The building shadowing over them as it tumbled. He raced ahead, creating shadow clones to rescue them. He hastily grabbed one of the people that fell. He held on to an old man as he barely escaped the mighty crash. It caused a tempest of dust and he could barely see as he raced out of it. Naruto set the old man on his feet and felt the memories of his shadow clones enter. The others were safe and he didn't bother waiting for the thanks from the elderly man before trying once more to look for Conan. Racing by several streets, before he finally spotted her. She was picking herself off the ground and someone her height beckoned to her by an alleyway. He quickly came and picked her up. She was surprised to see him before turning to the other kid. "Come on, I know a good way out of the village," he shouted. The street they were on was already clearing. "Hurry, before someone spots us." He definitely knew him, at least his face. A person he was looking for and had technically fought on one occasion. "Let's go, Conan," he ushered her towards the boy he knew was named Yahiko. "It's a sewer, yeah, but we should be able to get out safely through here," the orange-haired boy explained. He led the way with a small flashlight through the darkness. He heard some voices echo in the tunnels. "Don't worry, those are some people that I helped earlier. It's like a maze down here, so I made some signs that pointed the way out, gesturing towards an example. I was bored a lot so." "Ha, these kids are clever, no wonder they survived," Kurama commented. Naruto heard the vibrations made above. The two younger ones he was with showed their nervousness in subtle ways. Their shallow breathing and constant looking over the slightest noise. He kept his senses on the lookout for any potential attackers. They slowly trudged through the muck and pathways. He definitely avoided touching the walls or anything in particular. "Where's your pack, Naruto?" "Huh," raising his shoulders, only to find the weight he carried was gone. He paled in his realization that he had lost it. "Damn it, that had nearly everything we had." He clenched his fists in anger. "I must have lost it," he muttered several more curses as they walked. It wasn't much longer when he heard the constant dripping of rain hitting the sewer they were in. This is it. When they finally stopped, an arrow pointed upwards. A ladder was beside it, leading to the gray sky above. He jumped up, landing outside and inspected his surroundings. Just a grassy field with some several pairs of footprints leading towards who knows where. There was the distinct lack of sound from the direction of the town. The obvious was that the fighting had reached its conclusion. Hearing the clinking of the ladder being used as he waited above, he helped Conan from out of the tube, along with Yahiko himself. "Thanks," he said, still clutching his hands. He smiled and shook his hand in greeting. "Name's Yahiko." He was shorter, around Conan's age, wearing a large gray overcoat to protect him from the elements. He had a backpack that he carried. "Naruto," he replied, shaking his hand too. "Let's get the hell away from here before we do anything else right." He nodded, and Yahiko led the way to the nearest road. Naruto roused himself from sleep. He looked over the sleeping forms of both Yahiko and Conan. It was weird being in the presence some of the upcoming founders of the Akatsuki. Another founder still out in AIM somewhere. Didn't think I would meet the two of them in the same day. Now if only I had my pack. There was no fire, as they wanted to keep a low profile. They hadn't talked much since they left the sewer. Shock, fear and exhaustion had run its course through the two kids. He rested for a bit, but intended on waking after. He crawled out from the cave he was in, stretching his muscles when he did. He thought back on what happened in the village. It was relatively peaceful before absolute chaos broke through. It was horrible. The numerous innocent bystanders that were struck down. He recalled the moments when Neji was killed right before his eyes, along with other shinobi killed by the wood-style attack from the Ten Tails. It was an entirely different experience to see the deaths of powerless civilians against ninja. They were harmless. He looked over to his fellow orphans that lay asleep. This is what they grew up in, the middle of war. It unsettled him to see his fellow village shinobi take the lives of innocents. Either mistakenly or intentionally. He took a deep breath. It was probably premature to think that something was wrong with his chakra. Hoping that it would at least normalize in a couple of days. If only he knew how long since he arrived in this time. Right now he focused on returning to retrieve his bag, valuables and other things he needed to help with the time ahead. His chakra was still fairly pitiful, he hadn't had any time to recover, plus the clones he created to help the civilians sort of halted him. He had no choice but to get that bag back. His exhaustion wouldn't stop him now. He sat outside with some protection from the rain. He merely sat down, contemplating. Hesitantly, he formed a shadow clone and felt a drop in his chakra. Before it was so plainly unnoticeable. He formed a Rasengan next and he noticed he had to put more effort into it. He took a calming breath and attempted to mold some chakra, even that took a bit of labor. So I sort of have this disability, huh? He really did hope it was temporary. Anything can have consequences, no matter how mundane, great or terrible. Kurama commented. Since when have you become such a philosopher? Since I became your brain. Quote. I think I should avoid trying to use sage mode for the time being, until I at least fully recover, he frowned worriedly. Naruto, Kurama called out, his voice serious again. Take into account of the worst case scenario that you'll never return to normal, that'll you'll get more exhausted easily. I'm in a similar state with my chakra too, so I can't let my chakra flow so abundantly into you anymore. Alright, it was a disturbing thought. A sacrifice for a great accomplishment, he hoped that it wasn't true. Everything would be so much better if he didn't have to give anything at all. It's been a really long day. He wasn't looking forward to it. He felt some built-up frustration, from everything. He wanted to destroy a nearby piece of tree, but even that would take of his precious energy needed for today. That made him even more pissed off. Some of the items he held in his bag had some sentimental value. He wasn't about to lose it immediately since coming back. He had enough of it, however. He was a person of action, and that's something he always did. He wrapped a long piece of cloth around his face, to help hide his identity. He stood up, flipping his hood over him and started the walk back to the town that had been seized. He sprinted across wet ground and slippery trees to get to the town. He saw the glow of the town in the skyline as he neared it. He saw no sights of patrols so far. Seeing the buildings in the distance, he slowed his approach. It would be crazy for me to go barging in like I own the place. More than usual at least, the fox commented. He wasn't sold on the idea of hurting his comrades either, even those from other villages. If he had his leaf band, he might have been able to infiltrate it more easily. With his pathetically low chakra, he wouldn't be able to create hundreds of shadow clones at the moment. He could have snuck back inside through the sewers that Yahiko had showed him. Except it seemed more likely that any entrances would have been sealed, or had traps placed on them. If they showed any form of competency at least. So the only ideal plan was a more direct approach. He circled around the town to find the most vulnerable spot to get inside. Making sure to avoid any small patrols around the village. He soon found an area that was the least occupied, which wasn't much compared to the other options, but it had to do. It would be smart if there was traps placed everywhere, Kurama said. Yeah, good call. He stood at the edge of large field filled with tall grass. Rain softly drifted to the ground like falling mist. The moonlight shone faintly through the cracks of clouds, hardly lighting the landscape. The sun had disappeared a little more than 2 hours ago. The only useful source of light came from the upcoming town. The lack of colors on the buildings and constant rain had an air of melancholy associated with it. He slowly traversed through the tall grass, hoping that there weren't any Byakugan users guarding it. It gave him some slight pause, that he shook away. Now's not the time. There were numerous amounts of traps engineered to alert of any possible intruders that Naruto bypassed. Even though the distance to the town was about 200 meters, it was taking a while to traverse the distance. He was getting frustrated at such a slow crawl, but what he found out when training for senjutsu was that sensing for nature energy helped calm him. He did not dare try to collect any of it, if his chakra had been disrupted. After an hour of avoiding traps and various curious patrols, he finally made it into the edge of town. Some shinobi ran their rounds as he jumped up to the nearest building, hiding between some cracks in the building. There were numerous leaf ninja littered among the flat roofs of the towns. He witnessed house raids being completed, captives being rounded up at the nearest street. Do you think I should help them? Seeing several being thrown to the ground, several civilians were sobbing, clutching their children and loved ones. You'll only make it worse. How so? Will you be able to care for them? Protect them at all times? Or to let them fend for themselves? Even if you decide to rescue them, will they even be able to outrun the shinobi? Alright, geez, just a yes or no would have been okay. Still, it was perspective that he hadn't really thought of. It made him ponder as he continued towards where he had originally lost his bag. Some people had remarked about him being able to get people to follow him, to start believing in him because of who he was. He desired to be Hokage, yet, he needed to think more. To start thinking of the consequences of his actions. It's going to be some hard work. Numerous Konoha shinobi were patrolling the streets, some no doubt celebrating their victory as he heard some excited yelling, others were on top rooftops, keeping a lazy watch on the streets. He also hadn't been caught yet. There doesn't seem be any Hyugas. He finally reached the entrance where he had lost his bag. It was a fairly busy street, shinobi entering, lugging around bags. He kept to the shadows, but noticed plenty of shinobi had the raven hair with coal eyes. They really reminded him of Sasuke, especially how they carried themselves. A confident and proud pace. Uchiha are not an impossibility, Kurama stated. He recalled Obito telling him of the fate of the Uchiha. There, curse, was a whole lot of crock of shit, definitely. Anything that had to do with fate, destiny, or anything that was predetermined didn't sit well with him at all. If there was something that he could change for the better, it was to help them avoid being slaughtered for trying to revolt against the village. It's not like they've done it yet. He frowned. He made certain to keep out of their line of sight as he searched from above. Sadly, he found no trace of it, either taken or under one of the several piles of rubble. Maybe they've taken it somewhere. Noticed my headband inside. They must have a lost and found tent or something. A populated area might hold one. He closely followed a group, until they reached a large encampment. An area devoid of any buildings. He recalled the area as a farmer's market where he had stopped to buy some food. There were plenty of tents. He estimated that it at least housed 200 shinobi. That's a lot of people I don't want to hurt. Too badly at least. The grounds were busy, a mess of people setting up their own tents and walking around. He saw several buildings that surrounded the site, shinobi entering and leaving. It should be in one of those. The problem was that there was too many people going about to sneak in. The plenty of guards above the buildings would also spot him. Shadow clones for a distraction then. He created several shadow clones to duplicate themselves outside of town. He waited for a whole half hour before he felt some memories mix in with his. At least 30 solid clones to create a distraction, starting in 2 minutes. He moved out of the side of building he was on, quickly and quietly traversing to the top. A Chunin guard was overlooking, mostly keeping watch over the other flat roofs. He silently crept up behind him, recalling some of the training Jiraiya have taught him. He reached for his neck, and he began to desperately struggle. The Chunin tried to shout for help, but only strained gasps escaped. It was only a few moments later when he went limp. He should be out for a few minutes. He checked his breathing, finding it stable. He formed more shadow clones to take out several more lookouts nearby, so that he could get in fast and quietly. Finding himself trying to breathe normally, that took plenty out of him. He heard the muted booms in the distance, the light of the flares near the entrance of the village. Excitement grew down below. Shinobi exited from out of their tents. Jonin shouted orders to their subordinates. The courtyard quickly grew chaotic as the mass of ninja made their way towards the commotion. Smaller squads quickly dispersed towards different walls. He rightly assumed that defenses weren't too weak in case the attack was a distraction. He landed gracefully on the hard concrete and rapidly made his way towards the mess of buildings. He entered one building, finding a mess of items sprawled over tables and bags lined up under them. Halt! An voice called out from behind before he took another step. He didn't listen, instead turning around and facing a straggler. "You dare attack Konoha territory?" he said lowly. The raven hair, the black bold eyes. Naruto saw he wore a high-collared outfit similar to Sasuke's. He saw the symbol of the Uchiha embroidered on the jacket. His next words were condescending. "You're infiltrating? Stops here. An Uchiha, right? Think you need your Sharingan to stop me?" Naruto questioned. "It'll take less than 10 seconds, he responded, confidently. In Naruto's point of view, he could only blink dumbly at him. Thanks." He saw his clone sneak from behind and engage him. He lay on the floor unconscious a moment later. Wonder if they are all like that bastard Sasuke. As he stared at the drooling mess that the Uchiha was. He was too easy though, Naruto commented. He wondered if all Uchihas were like that. Sasuke could at least back his claims. Yup. Was he really talking to himself? He created more shadow clones to help him search, along with the other buildings nearby. By then he felt winded from today's exertion. He turned the place upside down to find his bag. Every second crawled. Any moment they would realize his ruse and he would have to fight his way out. In his present state, even that would be difficult. Memories poured into him, his clones not finding any sign of his pack. Even after a more thorough second search. Ah! Shit! He screamed in frustration. He needed more supplies for Konan, himself and Yahiko. He quickly scrounged up more supplies as quickly as possible. Feeling all his clones dissipate when he finished. It was too late to find his stuff. At least he had Sasuke's headband in his tool bag, as well as his father's kunai and a copy of Jiraiya's book. Plenty, but Iruka's headband was also important to him. He sprinted out the door and climbed up to the top of the building before rushing across the rooftops. Most of the rooftops were empty, most likely gone to support the walls in the outer area of town. The gentle fall of mist transformed into large heavy droplets. As he was closing in on the exit, he saw another form suddenly pop up on the opposite side of the roof. He stopped with a skid, sighing in annoyance. She was small, slender and lithe. He faced a kunoichi. She wore a Chunin flak jacket and Konoha Hita-8 in its rightful place, black pants that fit snugly and a katana that hung behind her waist. She was fair-skinned and had medium-length wet black hair that was tied into a high ponytail that reached her neck. She had long bangs that were on the side of her face, and partially covered the Hita-8 and just above her onyx eyes and nose. Seeing her wet heart-shaped face, and determined black eyes. "You're not going anywhere," her voice revealing her confidence. A voice that Naruto found lovely. This isn't the place to think about girls. Luckily the heat in his cheeks was hidden by the cloth he wore. His opinion of her went up a margin when saw the swirl of the Sharingan in her eyes. At least she's not underestimating me. Perhaps not all Uchihas were ever so arrogant. As she silently pulled out her katana from the scabbard. Makoto Uchiha was returning from a scouting run from beyond the fields. She ignored the banter from her team. Rain kept pouring down from the sky, she just wanted to get some sleep. As an Uchiha, she was very prideful of her clan. An exception was that preferred not to boast about it because being best friends with a loud and brash redhead had stopped her from that. Something about sticks up Uchiha's asses, and many other crude insults. She wondered once again about how she got to be best friends with her. She already knew the reason, of course. When her mother had died, Kushina's energy and upbeat attitude had really helped her out of her depression. She was always taught by being an Uchiha that wielded the Sharingan would grant her superiority over others, and that the clan should come first and the village second. She felt somewhat conflicted in her ideals. Kushina and her boyfriend Minato believed in the village came first for them. But they don't belong to clans. It may have had more effect on her if they were. She was proud to not have the arrogance that the vast amount of the Uchiha clan had, something that Kushina was responsible for. It did not mean she wasn't confident. I wonder if she's doing well. She was stationed in the Land of Rivers, along with Minato to fight Suna Ninja. I hope she's doing okay. They stepped into town after some light convincing and passwords being exchanged. She was thankful their run had come to a close, only for it to be broken by the sound of an alarm and flares lighting up across from town. That's from the east entrance. Her Jonin captain claimed. Uchiha, inform HQ of the status of the northern sector. Okay, she replied. Before they all jumped towards the commotion being caused. Already a counter-attack. She quickly traversed a nearby building to the top. She was probably more skilled than the other two Chunin she was with, but she wasn't very well liked by him. Nonetheless, she had a command to follow, and the faster she completed it, the faster she could help defend. She couldn't but muse whether his distaste for her stemmed from her eyes or from the general attitude from her clan. The rain seemed to have picked up the pace, making her damp hair even more soaked than the gentle mist-like rain. She disregarded it and continued on her way, eager to meet any resistance from the possible attack. She moved past the center buildings, taking a slight detour to avoid wasting time on the larger buildings. She saw movement up to her left. He's heading away from the attack, and isn't wearing the standard attire. She moved to intercept him, moving faster than him. Stopping in front of him on a wide but small roof, he quickly joined her soon after. She scrutinized him, and quickly reasoned that he was infiltrating or had hid in the town since he wore nothing identifying of Konoha shinobi. It was almost uplifting to see some color in a gloomy setting of gray and drab colors. He wore a red jacket with thick orange stripes on either side of his arm along with orange pants that didn't mix well with the gray texture of building. Seemingly fond of the color orange if its frequency was of any indication. She saw the blonde hair that hung over his serious and annoyed cerulean eyes. Immediately, an image of Minato conjured up in her mind. She wiped her thoughts away and was prepared to kill him, activating her bloodline limit. She couldn't see any outward reaction. Because of her clan's infamy, most shinobi were generally intimidated. This guy, she felt uneasy from his lack of reaction. Not even a flinch. Her eyes caught no subtle movement, like he was made of stone. She saw the muscles under her eyes raise. Is he smiling? She held her ground, trying her confidence. His eyes showed eagerness but no form of hostility. Annoyance was still present, that only angered her. No games, huh? At least you're not like the other one I ran into. Oh, don't worry, that guy is completely fine, no one's in danger as far as I know. She attempted to cast a genjutsu, it worked. Only for it to fail immediately. What? How did he catch it so quickly and with no hand signs? She could obviously see the amusement in his eyes. Genjutsu won't work on me, sadly. They hadn't moved an inch but Makoto could feel her palms getting clammy. He completely believes in himself. His body language was one thing, but his fiery eyes were another. He held no doubts in himself and held an aura of clear confidence. Makoto could believe that he had the skills to back him up. She took a deep breath to calm herself. I guess genjutsu is out of the question. His eyes watched her closely, scrutinizing every movement. I'd like to hang out some more, but I'm a bit tired from today. I don't think you can understand it. Plus the whole lot of angry shinobi in a few short minutes, he said lightly. It was clear that he was waiting for her to act first, so she would gladly humor him. I'm an Uchiha, she said to him. Although more to herself to help calm her nerves. We're one of the elites of the Hidden Leaf, raising her katana at him. Everything has a weakness. Sending chakra to her feet, she quickly crossed the distance between them. She brought her sword in downward diagonal slash, which he quick blocked with his kunai he held with his left hand. Undeterred, Makoto kept pressure on her blade and used her flexibility to try and land a left kick to his head, which he quickly blocked with his right forearm. She quickly retreated only to dive back in to deliver more strikes. Her Sharingan captured his precise and experienced movements. She heard the clings of metal scrapping against metal as he redirected or blocked her strikes. It's like he's playing with me. As he hadn't even retaliated. She jumped away and sheathed her katana. I'm no master at kenjutsu yet. Once she landed, she quickly closed the distance once more. She threw punches which would only get deflected, but she noticed she had the advantage as she put him in a defensive state. Except she could not land any solid hits, even with the help of her Sharingan. He started to retaliate, throwing hard punches that she blocked. She was sure that it would leave bruises in the morning. Taking inspiration for Kushina in their spars, she threw a left hook, which he blocked with his left hand. She was able to get a firm hold on his wrist. She punched with her right fist, and predicting his movements with her Sharingan, watched as he went to block her fist while she went for a kick to his ribs. She put force and her kick landed, although the only reaction was a grunt as he reacted with a kick of his own. She retreated before he could land it. I won't be able to win with taijutsu either. His attacks were punishing. Whenever she blocked an attack, it made her numb. In their brief scuffle, she was only able to land one solid hit, and it didn't even seem to have winded him at all. He could have done the same to me. Why didn't he grab me? Grabbing a few shuriken in her pouch, she threw it at him. She jumped back and still in mid-air she completed a few hand signs. She inhaled only to exhale her clan's signature jutsu. A violent fireball that covered the expanse of the roof. With the small distance, the large fireball quickly approached him. There's no way for him to escape. The bright flame would no doubt alert anyone nearby. Just in case, she quickly placed her right hand on the hilt of her blade in a reverse grip. Once it dissipated, she noticed a hole in the roof. What's up? She heard behind her, almost playfully. She had already twirled around, quick drawing her sword to slice him. She heard a loud slap. Even with a quick draw, he held her blade between his palms, despite how much force she attempted to put through it. It didn't budge. He heaved a weighty sigh. That's good enough. I'd enjoy a little spar, but I'm a bit too tired of all this, perhaps some other time. He said, not one that conveyed a condescending tone. Even she struggled to end his life, or to wound him. It was then some of her fellow shinobi came. First, a blinding light flashed before her eyes quickly adjusted. Her eyes captured the massive fireball heading towards them. Far too large and too quickly for her to escape. She continued to keep pressure on her blade, making sure that he wouldn't be able to move. He peered behind, those moments far likely shorter for him. He was unworried, his expression changing into something more serious. He seemed to erupt in a wild fire, yet her eyes captured the chakra that formed around him. One hand released her katana, and she felt the strong tug on her sword, unbalancing her and causing her to lose her grip and managing to take it from her. His other hand raised up as if to catch. She was flabbergasted when a giant transparent hand appeared and caught the giant fireball, crushing it out from existence. Her eyes caught the numerous phoenix flower balls supporting the attack. Makoto's recorded the knowledge of a technique he used. The hand signs, smoke appeared beside him and the fire that surrounded him disappeared. The clone appeared and jumped up into the air in a flourish, performing a flip while deflecting the shuriken infused with the fireballs. The clone was solid, but didn't try to engage any longer and raced through them. The real one disengaged, descending down into streets below, losing sight of him. "Down there!" she shouted. Two listened and gave chase while the other two chased the clone before she could protest. "Was he messing with me?" The only response was of the patter of the rain and the sound of orders being shouted. "Naruto!" Conan poked him in the shoulder. He was laid sideways, covered in his red jacket in what appeared to be a warm sleep. Laid about in front of him was an imposing sword. Another bag of food was also laid nearby, one that he hadn't possessed previously. She looked around, finding Yahiko enjoying some food that he had brought with him. He had offered to give some despite that he had little of it. They had woken up an hour ago, yet the eldest one of them was still asleep. Even the cracking thunder that shook the ground beneath them didn't cause him to stir. "Naruto!" She spoke again, poking him in the shoulder. She kept up in her persistence until he finally reacted to her actions. He mumbled incoherently, so another poke. Until he finally, tiredly, opened a single eye. It didn't focus on her until a moment later. "Woo!" His voice thick with sleep. "You're finally awake." He frowned, not amused. She didn't quite know him yet. If his dreams really were genuine or not, she was given food. Plenty of it too. He was very friendly, not suspiciously so. He just acted without some underhanded purpose. She wanted to find a bit more before deciding anything. His food offerings made her stay. "Where did you get this?" She grabbed the blade by his handle. Surprised with the little weight it had, she settled it down after showing it. He really didn't react to her. "Found it," he mumbled. "So you found this big bag of food too?" He closed his eyes once again and tried to nod off to sleep. She didn't believe it. Anything left on the side of the road was picked apart, either food or to sell. She shook the bag to accentuate her point. His eyes peered open again, tiredly, but his sleep began to slowly shake away. He sat up, wiping the tiredness from his eyes. He sat back against the cave's surface and he just simply looked at her. "Fine. I stole it from the village when you went to sleep," he yawned deeply. "I've gotten it just for the two of you." She stared at him, wondering about several things. If he simply stolen it, or the fact was that he really was capable of himself if he was able to sneak back into the village filled with ninjas. "I forgot to give the sword back to the pretty Kunoichi too." Another yawn. "Can you get me a rice ball? I'm going to head back to sleep. Eat whatever you want, Yahiko too." She began to get excited at his proposal. She quickly dug into the bag to grab his request and hand it over to him. He mumbled a thanks and lied back down facing away from her. Other than yesterday, she couldn't recall the last time she had filled her stomach. It was very unusual and the other day she had nearly puked that out. Hot water with steaming ramen made her mouth water. She dug in, making sure to grab some for Yahiko, who had gracefully given some of his own food he had scrounged up. She went over to the orange-haired boy, handing him some of the food she had. "Have some, there's plenty more." Naruto's treat. She plopped down and began to eat once again. There was no hot food, but she wasn't complaining at all. "Oh, thanks." He focused on eating, rather than talking. He pocketed some in his bag. She was debating whether to stay with Naruto. There was no doubt he was trained to fight, or to escape. He was easily surviving the war, from all the food and money he had with him. He also seemed rather sincere in his hopes, and he also pointed out that she was completely free to go as she pleased. She guessed she saw no harm in staying for a while. They finished eating in the time being, feeling stuff just felt so good. Some minutes of silence was spent trying to enjoy that fact. She caught the boy Yahiko sending some glances over to Naruto. Hearing the snoring echo within the cave. So, does he usually sleep in this long? Oh, I wouldn't know. He tilted his head. Really? How long have you two known each other? Well, actually, I only met him yesterday. He also fed me too. And just now too? He asked, which she nodded. Well, I want to thank him personally. It looks like he worked hard on it. To prove his point, the eldest of them gave a loud snore before settling in more peaceful state. It was true, he looked rather exhausted. He never really woke up when they spoke some time before. He was obviously still tired from the night before of. Whatever he did, was the sort of fashion of his prize. What exactly did he do? Would he share what he did? He seemed very vulnerable now. She recalled that he had said he was sick in a manner of speaking. Perhaps this was it. They talked a bit more, waiting for the blonde to awake from his slumber. She sat down, peering out from the small cave they were in. The misty rain ran less and less until finally, it stopped. Several clouds broke apart and bright rays of sun pierced through the veil. It was always so nice when it stopped raining. She felt the warmth of the sun, and wondered how long it would last. As if sensing the rain had halted, she heard Naruto stirring behind her. He sat up, slowly waking himself as he sighed every now and then. Until he finally asked, "What's the time?" "Noon," she answered, checking the watch she carried. 12 hours. Wow. He yawned greatly, wiping his eyes and reached his bag to grab a few things to eat. He finally then noticed the other boy they were with. They looked so similarly alike, it was uncanny. Both with spiky hair, the soft blue eyes, even some of their facial features were a bit alike. Hey, you two look like you're related. They both looked astonished at her comparison. Before Yahiko finally spoke, "Hey, I want to thank you for giving some of your food." Naruto looked oddly at him, like he was trying to remember him or something. No problem. Anything else? Now that he had mentioned it, it was a little odd to stick around for just a thank you. So you know how to fight, huh? You said you snuck into the town before. Naruto continued eating, looking satisfied. Sure did. How did you do that, by the way? She asked, seeing as they were on the subject. They weren't expecting me being alone, or so soon. They were setting up camp, one guess. He finished eating, taking out some clothes and a shirt from the bag. He started wiping the blade with the material before ripping the shirt and wrapping it around the sharp steel. Yahiko looked intently focused. He didn't seem to be paying any attention as to what the blonde was doing. What are you? She began to ask. Me. I'm just making sure there's no water on it. I want to make sure it doesn't fall apart before I return it. If I ever do, that is. Besides, I'm not the kind to use something like this. You want to return it? That didn't make much sense. Then she remembered his peace talks. Following that, she could assume that he hadn't killed anyone to obtain what he had returned with. I hope I get to, as he wrapped the sword with linen. There was a sort of unassuming air that he carried. She liked to think that she was good at finding lies. Conan cemented the idea that he really was a good person. So you know how to fight, right? Yahiko finally spoke, his expression displaying strong intent. He spoke again before Naruto got the chance to reply. How did you learn? Naruto stared blankly. His wrapping of the sword was finished now. He was merely content with laying back against the rock wall. This old guy taught me, Well, before he was murdered, he said rather emotionlessly. Yahiko's eyes gleamed with excitement. Hey, I have pretty neat idea. Well, it involves you teaching us, but will you teach me too? Then we can all watch out for one another and stuff. You know, be friends and all. She was surprised, undoubtedly. All she had thought was to survive another day, and really, that changed just now as thoughts were towards when the next meal would come. No one had ever offered her food before either, yet these two had. She laughed quietly. That's what Naruto had said, except the way he phrased it sounded much better. Caught off guard, turning over to Naruto, who bore a smile. You had the same idea too. Yeah, I don't think we're the first ones either. Naruto crawled out from within, reaching the outside. That's a yes, Yahiko. I mean, I never taught anyone how to fight from the ground up, but I'll guess I'll try. If I can't, we'll certainly find someone who definitely can. It doesn't matter, we stick together, we'll do all right, Yahiko replied. They both looked to share the same ideals, which in Conan's eyes, was a good thing. She decided then that since Yahiko trusted him so quickly, she would do the same. I want to join too. Naruto's eyes widened, and he smiled. Great, we're one step closer. Makoto lay in her sleep bag, a simple staying at the ceiling of her tent. The constant dripping that she heard above. It was a small, hardly large enough to support her and the supplies she brought. Nor was it tall enough to even sit in. She was plagued by the thoughts of last night's events. The guy she had fought with, who had held back and outpaced the likes of the son of the Uchiha chief. Still, Fugaku was a bit of dick for firing a fireball in her direction. He had replied that he hadn't seen her, that she was reluctant to believe. He gave a rather sincere apology that she accepted. She had a feeling that if she wasn't an Uchiha she wouldn't get an apology at all. She wished they would drop the succeed the mission at any cost mentality many Konoha shinobi adapted, which was one the Uchiha clan followed, along with the difference being, clan first. Destroying the enemy was the primary mission, to win the war. She was glad that Minato and Kushina followed the comrade first. Everyone was getting tired of this war, but no one knew when it would end. Someone named Shimura had apparently started this thing to spiral out of control. Mission success rate had gone up, with the added effect of more fatalities. Which was something she wasn't eager to join the list of that. Mostly, her thoughts were interrupted by the blue-eyed blonde she had fought. He was extremely capable if their bout was of any indication. He had replied that he was tired, and all the breathing he did showed that. He had leapt away and somehow knew that shuriken were within the small flames. He was familiar with the Uchiha. Her genjutsu was rendered useless. He had immediately located it and disrupted it far too quickly to be of use. He was also responsible for the panic that was caused, seeing as he outwitted the son of the chief with the aid of shadow clones. Who was that guy? She asked herself. She shivered at what she was told this morning. No sign of infiltrators that were found, no POWs that had escaped, and none of the civilians that were left behind knew anything. The only hint was that he searched the building where they had assigned possible lost valuable items. The entire town had been on lockdown alert, no one leaving or entering until a possible cause was found. No one saw him enter and he had completely rendered a dozen of Chunin, and even some Jonin unconscious. All were stationed around the lost and found building. It sounded impossible that he had done it completely unnoticed. All were completely unharmed, save for a little bruising. He could have killed so many single-handedly. Me as well. He made this entire company look like fools. She heard the kicking at the flaps of her tent. Makoto. What is it? Can I ask your help for something? Makoto noisily climbed out of her tent. She stood up to see Akira, older but still fairly small with the same height as her. She was fairly plain looking with short blonde hair that reached her shoulders. She wore a chunin vest with dark blue pants. She was part of the squad she was assigned to. An acquaintance to Makoto to say the least. What for? She asked. Help find my bag at that, a lost items thingy or whatever, she explained. Makoto was sorely tempted to turn her down. Except one of Kushina's last words were, find some damn friends, and Akira was only one of the only people who would approach her other than her fellow Uchiha. Makoto knew many of the Uchiha clan, but she didn't want to associate with many of them because of their arrogance. Sure, lead the way, I need to find my blade anyway. She hoped that the blonde discarded her katana and didn't steal it. Thanks, she happily replied. They walked together towards a set of buildings. She really hoped that he hadn't stolen it. So did you hear that one guy knocked out our sentries yesterday? She asked. Yeah, I actually fought him, she replied. She waited for her usual response. Oh, how did it go? How did he look like? How old was he? Was he cute? She hoped that last bit was more of joke than a serious question. They haven't known each other for long, but Akira did like to talk about boys. At least she's competent enough. Why do you want to know? He's the enemy. He can't be that bad if he hadn't really hurt anyone. Came in, went out without doing a whole lot. She couldn't really argue with that. Even when she fought him, she did not particularly feel in danger. Not to mention that she felt he could have ended her immediately. She sighed either way. I wouldn't know what he looked like, he had the majority of face hidden. I can only say that he had blonde hair and blue eyes. It really reminded me of Minato Namikaze. She cooed. He's really a looker, isn't he? She had to agree. That didn't mean she would ever verbally acknowledge it. There was talks about how he was an prodigy, so he was well known within the village. He had become a jonin early on, a testament to his skill. She wasn't one, yet. They passed through the sights in town quickly, finding the building of the lost items. They entered. She had overheard that this was where the perpetrator had been seen, and also subdued an Uchiha. So what's your bag look like? I'm not sure. Seriously. What? I just got that bag. Anyway, there's supposed to be a tag inside. You're so forgetful. As Akira wandered off towards the assortment of bags and other large items in the corner, she herself went to the weapons that were sorted neatly in the center of the room. Despite several inspections, and closer examinations of similar blades, she couldn't find it. She fumed internally, before reasoning that it may take a while to appear. She would have to keep checking afterwards to see. She hoped that her sword hadn't been stolen by the blue-eyed guy. She dragged herself towards Akira, who was still searching. Found what you're looking for? No, I didn't. Hopefully it turns up. So, she waited, wondering what she was going to ask as she opened up a pack and took a quick look inside. Setting it aside when it wasn't her friend's. Given thought about your future? Akira voiced. Your meaning? Meaning, I would like to have a family one day, she replied. Oh, I haven't really given it much thought. I mean, you're 17, right? Surprised by her question and answer. She was mostly occupied with trying to survive this war. Heroics can wait, it was what the majority of her clan was focused on. Another was trying to be an worthy kunoichi, of that for her clan and village. It's for the future, obviously, not right now. It kind of gave her thoughts about what would occur if a kunoichi found out if she was pregnant during she was deployed in the war. If there was any consequences of that. It felt like she had been deployed for a lifetime, despite the fact that she served a year's worth of the war. Her thoughts and anything said by Akira was disrupted from the bag she had opened and read. There, inscribed on the tag inside was, Uzumaki. She blankly looked at it, making sure she wasn't hallucinating such a thing. Uzumaki, she whispered. From what she knew, the Uzumaki were wiped out in the beginning of the war. The only one she knew was Kushina, and the only one in the village. Her curiosity piqued, she searched inside to find food, scrolls and a most peculiar thing. A leaf village headband, stitched on a long piece of black cloth. Puzzled, Kushina wasn't stationed anywhere near her, in fact 2 days' journey south. It became apparent that it didn't belong to her. Found it, Akira announced, displaying it for the world to see. Deciding that it was in Kushina's best interest, she took the bag and placed it around her shoulders. It likely didn't belong to anyone in her battalion. Conan walked alongside the 2 people she had met. She had never had some companionship before. She notably felt safer, but she didn't survive for so long without being wary. She looked at Naruto, who looked very contemplative, but occasionally would glance somewhere at brief periods. Perhaps it was something that she hadn't heard. He had said he was shinobi trained. The eternal-like rain fell gently. She thought it most often fell harshly. It was a nice change of pace, like it was sign of a lull. There was some other refugees, but they kept to themselves on the other side of the road they walked on. Naruto. What is it? He asked, looking at her under the hood he wore. Is it okay if I ask you something? She saw Yahiko take a small glance, no doubt he would hear whatever there was to say because of how close they walking. Go ahead, I mean friends ask each other things right? And know each other, so ask what you want. There was plenty of things that she wanted to ask, but it felt rude to ask so many at the same time. Well, this dream of yours, how do you think we'll accomplish it? She couldn't quite understand how they would get it done. Naruto gave a friendly smile. Well, through what my godfather would say, he desired that peace to be achieved through mutual understanding, no violence, and to resolve our hate for each other. That sounds pretty simple, Yahiko replied. I want to stop this war. I do too, but I think it sounds pretty hard. Yahiko continued to talk, more fiercely. We share the same thing then. That's why I want to train. Hey, then that means we're partners then. Naruto seemed kind of happy about that. Except there's a catch, you can't give up, no matter what. That's what it means to be a shinobi. Having comrades beside you, supporting you, there's not a lot that you can't do together. Yahiko looked up at the gray sky, his voice low. No more fighting, just peace. You won't have to worry about anything ever again. It sounded surreal. To her at the moment, seeing the hungry looks of refugees she passed, it sounded impossible. It was only something to dream about, but the way they believed in it. It looked like it can be done. She vowed to herself that it would be her dream as well. They had walked a snail's pace to what he was used to. The only thing that made him feel better was that the land of rain wasn't quite as large as his home country. What would have been a day's run, if uninterrupted, would be a week's journey. That was only accounting for the length of the country. They were only heading towards a town. He watched over the sleeping forms of Yahiko and Conan, under their shelter. If it can ever be described at that, which was only a slope of a cliff that hid them from the overhead rain. If a wind picked an unfavorable direction, they would awake drenched. Naruto mused that they would have made into the town the Yahiko had picked if they were shinobi. They weren't just yet, just civilians so far. They could not sustain themselves near a fraction as to what shinobi can. He had suggested that Yahiko pick their settlement, since he had no knowledge about the country, and Yahiko happily suggested their destination. It was somewhere further away from the war zones, at the very least danger wouldn't reach them for a while. Absent-mindedly, he found that he had his father's kunai in his hand. He didn't quite know when he picked it out of his tool bag. He fiddled it with, Tracing the kanji that was inscribed on its handle, it looked worn already. He didn't know the technique, of course, but it was something to remember his father by. You ready to go? Minato asked. Naruto nodded, taking a deep breath at the sudden surge of power now that the full power of Kurama entailed. He looked at his dad, his Edo Tensei eyes still present. Like him, Minato had been able to escape with the help of Kurama. Yeah, Naruto sighed loudly. He looked at the blonde hair that hung just above his eyes. He picked up the bag at his feet. Kurama had said that they might end up a few months before he attacked. The side of effects of performing the jutsu was unknown, since immense chakra was needed. He didn't know if he would appear weeks or months away from the attack. Cheer up, Naruto. After all, you are my son, right? Naruto managed to smile. His failure still kept hungering over him. He couldn't save his friends. I won't fail this time, Naruto replied. That's more like it. Minato looked at his son. He closed his eyes and slightly smiled at him. Now, there's something I want to give you. Huh, here. He handed him one of his special kunai, its handle facing toward him. It's a bit heavy, and unconventional, but it's incredibly sturdy, built to last. Naruto slowly grasped the handle of the three-pronged kunai. Its grip was larger than ordinary kunai and it had a faint yellow color to it. Thanks, Dad. He had left soon after. Minato didn't belong to the world anymore. He desired to be with his wife, Naruto's own mother. He had left knowing the world would be good in Naruto's hands. He felt the sting in his throat but controlled it quickly. He twirled the kunai in his hand, feeling like it would last like his dad had said. He thought about the first fight he had with it. He slightly smiled at the spar. The Sharingan girl he fought atop a roof, although short, it gave a peculiar feeling. Kinda nostalgic. It reminded him of the fight above the hospital roof with Sasuke. Although with much less arrogance than what Sasuke showed. He was glad there was at least some Uchiha who weren't total dicks. Prompted by this, he remembered some of the moments of when he fought alongside Sasuke against Obito. He shook his thoughts away. I shouldn't be thinking about the past. I guess the future. No, that won't happen. Damn, it's confusing. He decided to just call it a night and pulled his hood over his head to sleep. Naruto walked ahead. He saw the many shinobi that had been caught in the Tsukiyomi. Many had emotionless expressions. He couldn't do anything to help them. Amongst them, the cages of the elemental nations, including all of his friends. Some of them even had some smiles on their faces and they lived in their fake world. Naruto fell down on his knees. The red glow of the moon shone down on the earth. Puddles formed, combined from the rain and techniques and blood from fallen ninja that littered the land. I couldn't do anything. Damn it. He repeatedly slammed his fist into the wet rocks and dirt. He screamed in agony of his failures as the wounds in his knuckles repeatedly healed itself. He fell down on his side after a while. His fist felt incredibly numb from the abuse. What was the use of living, if everything else is basically dead? He couldn't get the faces of Hinata, Sakura, Kakashi, Sasuke and everyone else out of his mind. He had to do something, but he couldn't move at all. He realized he hadn't had any sleep in the longest time, that he had fought with everything he had today and it didn't matter at all in the end. As soon as he closed his eyes he fell in dark restless sleep. Naruto's eyes flitted open. He could feel his heart hammering in his chest. He controlled his breathing. He sat up, hearing the patter of the rain and took in his surroundings. He sat on a small worn mattress for one. He looked to his right to see Yahiko and Konan sleeping on their own mattress. They found the cave they slept in and at Yahiko's suggestion, they planned to make it their little home. They had reached town a day ago and Naruto had used up most of the money buying supplies. He was questioned by Konan about how he had gotten the money. which Yahiko had replied for him that he had no doubt had gotten it by stealing. Now his precious Gama-chan was nearly empty after buying the supplies. Fairly soon they would have to resort to stealing. He would gladly do it to protect and help them. He took a look at orange-haired boy. Naruto had found out that he was raised as a merchant son that traveled frequently, hence his knowledge of the landscape and towns. His father had been killed last year from a desperate individual who was starving. These wars are horrible. He stood up and walked over to the little package in the corner on the cave. He grabbed the package and pulled out a small portable stove. He installed the fuel and began to prepare some food for everyone else. Hey Conan, she didn't wear a coat anymore, now that they were inside and away from the rain. He found out that she wore a plain pale pink long-sleeve shirt with blue pants. What's that? It smells good. It's breakfast, he replied. It was very simple breakfast. Some eggs, cheese and some toast with some butter. Sure, it wasn't extravagant, but it was certainly better than what they had eat to get here. It was got food, something that was miles better than the cold canned soup they had, along with the wet bread and soggy rice balls. It certainly had gotten chilly in the morning. Conan yawned as she covered herself with her blanket and walked over to where he sat. A large flat rock was used as a table that Naruto had gotten from outside. It was still slightly wet from the rain. It was supported by other flat rocks so it reached his shin. It sat a meter away from the entrance in their small cave. From the entrance their supplies would be kept to the right, and they would sleep on the left side of the cave. So you know how to cook? Conan had said, when she had wordlessly got up and prepared for today. He didn't really do much but cook. Yup, he replied, careful as to not be too loud seeing as Yahiko was asleep. Could I have some? He saw a hungry look in her eyes as she eyed a plate of food on the rock table. He thought about it for a moment. Yahiko looked like he would still be out of it for a while. Sure, I'll join you. He flipped the egg as he grabbed his plate. He brought the stove to a lower heat so that he eat more comfortably. He brought out forks for them both and they each grabbed their own. He gave a thanks of food and he saw a quick stunned look on her face, but she quickly joined him. She looked like she was resisting trying to gobble up the food as quickly as she could. Hot food. I don't even remember I had them last, she said between mouthfuls. She ate more quickly than he was doing at the moment. Other than the ramen, he said, although that involved just hot water, a different kind of meal. Glad you like it. It's going to be like that for a while, he smiled. They ate in silence for a bit. The only sounds were from the rain, forks lightly scraping on plastic plates and along with Yahiko's loud snoring. Can you teach me how to cook? She asked determinedly. Naruto looked up at her and he quickly wiped off the surprise on his face. She was never taught by her parents, and she never had the chance to teach herself. Of course. He nodded. In fact, I'll show you right now. Huh. He ushered her to join him. Right now? Yeah. Come on. Conan quickly stood up and went around the table, and sat herself right beside him. With a spatula he quickly took a slightly burned egg from the small pan and placed it on a spare plate. He left the heat where it was, since it was her first time trying to cook. So, what do we do? She asked. Well, put some butter on the pan with this kunai. He let her handle his father's kunai. That's too much. Yup, that's okay. She put the butter on the pan and it started to melt. What does the butter really do? As she eyed the melting butter curiously. Well, it doesn't make the food stick to the pan and it can make food taste better. She nodded in understanding and the butter started to sizzle. He handed her an egg. Here, make it crack on the pan. How? Like this, he mentioned with his hands an imaginary egg, on the edge of the pan. And then when it cracks, you split the egg with your fingers. Right. I'll try. She shakily brought the egg over the edge of the pan and brought it down, with too much force. The shell broke and the yolk came spilling out on stove, she gasped. Hey, don't worry about it, just try again, he tried to reassure her. He tried to hand her another egg, which was met with another shake of her head. We need to save our food, don't we? She asked hesitantly. Then how are you supposed to learn how to cook, huh? He asked curiously. About that, I'm pretty much out of money, but we can always steal. I don't know. I guess. Listen, I messed up a lot when I learned how to cook, you'll get better, promise. Okay. If you say so, she took the egg once more. Here's a easier way, break the shell over the pan with the kunai. Conan followed his advice, and smiled when it worked with no harm done. So when do I flip it? When it becomes more solid. There, now you can do it, she clumsily flipped it, which resulted in folding in on itself. It didn't matter all that much. It's ready now. It's not as great looking, Conan commented. Probably tastes just the same though. If you say so. How did you even make toast? As she looked around for a toaster, they didn't even have any power. With this, he showed her a metallic can, both with the top and bottom torn out. Some wire was wrapped around the top. He removed the pan and replaced it with the can. Just put some bread and it will be toast soon enough. She watched in fascination as he flipped it the other side. There. Now breakfast for Yahiko is done, so let's wake him up. I wonder when Nagato is going to show up. He thought absent-mindedly as he showed Conan how to cook some soup. Okay. So add the tomatoes now. She picked up the tiny cutting board filled with diced tomatoes and dropped into the soup. They had been here for 2 weeks now. Their supply of food they had bought with his money was now depleted. It seemed his train of thought was similar to Yahiko. Now we gotta steal, the orange-haired yelled out. He sat himself down next to the table. It's the only way. Really? Conan asked, as she looked at him for confirmation. I think so too. I mean, we even tried to look for jobs, Naruto said. He knew it was inevitable. Along with Yahiko, they tried to at least find something. I mean, if we're going to be strong shinobi, we gotta eat right, you know. He heard some deep amused laughter from the being within him. That's pretty funny coming from you, Naruto. You ate ramen all your life. You can't lie, you pretty much ate solely ramen. Kurama chuckled some more. He felt embarrassed by that fact. It was true, however. Even while with Jiraiya he hardly went a day with the stuff. Now you're thinking, Yahiko said. Dragging him back to reality and not in the sewer whenever he talked to Kurama, hardly any time had passed at all. This war had taken everything from us, it's only right that we take some of it back, right? So is that soup ready? I think so. Conan gave a questioning look to Naruto. Pretty much. As he checked the soup himself. A small comfortable silence overcame the three orphans. They sat and listened to the rain and most importantly, the hot soup. So Naruto, he mentioned for him to continue. Don't mean to pry or anything, but about your past. Where do you come from? Yahiko asked. At the request of Kurama, he had to make a backstory for himself. I guess I'm sort of like you. I traveled with some old guy, Naruto said. Both of the orphans listened intently. I guess you call him my godfather since he knew my dad since before he, they nodded in understanding. They were shinobi, right? He nodded. See this kunai? He pulled out of the unique kunai he was given before. This one belonged to my dad, it's special to me. Yahiko leaned in to get a closer look as well as Conan. Before Yahiko decided to interject jokingly. And you used it as a butter knife. Naruto couldn't help but laugh. It's kind of disrespectful if you ask me, the orange-haired boy continued, nodding to himself at his wisdom. Yeah, whatever, here's your bowl. he replied, settling the other one for Conan and himself. They ate quietly for the time being, taking in the quiet. Yahiko was the first to finish. He didn't get up, however, instead on looking determinedly at him. Naruto, do you think you can teach us now? He blinked at them. Shinobi training? Yes. Naruto rubbed his neck. Well, to be honest, it's all really simple for me. It comes entirely natural for me, since it's been so long ago since I first started. When did you start? I was first being taught when I was 6 years old. I was pretty good too, made top marks and all. Really? Top marks in what? At least what my master said in comparison in his class, he said he was top student too. From what he told me, he said that there's a school to be taught the basics, how to mold your chakra and whatever. Then you get picked for a team and are assigned a Jonin, an elite ninja to teach you a bit more stuff. From which village? Naruto tried to feign being puzzled. You know, I actually never asked, he just trained me so I didn't really care. Yahiko agreed, and Conan spoke up. What do they teach at shinobi schools? The old man said he taught me everything that is usually taught at the school. Basics. Blade handling, tool throwing, chakra control, boring ass safety, some ninjutsu, taijutsu. Plenty of other things that I probably forgotten about. So how would I handle a sword? Yahiko replied. Well, I was taught about it, how to care for it, amateur level handling and techniques. Got no ninjutsu with it, and I'm no master with it. So I don't think I would be good enough to teach you much. How about we start with that? I think teaching you the first thing I learned is better, he replied. Yahiko frowned, mumbling something about it being more fun. How do we that? Conan asked. Well, how do I explain this? Naruto scratched his head. It's within you, you kinda have to meditate to find it. So you search, and once you find it, it shouldn't be too hard to bring it out. It's not the hardest part though, another is learning control. So, first step, find your chakra. Step 2, bring it out. Step 3, focus your chakra and try to control it, I guess. I was told that's the exercise what you gotta do until it becomes natural, like walking. Are those the steps you do every time you try to do something, like ninjutsu? Pretty much, but that doesn't count a whole lot of other stuff you gotta do after. Like what? He asked curiously. There was a lot of questions, and he didn't know how to explain it. Let's go there after. So the first year isn't much different than a civilian school, like math and grammar, history was about ninja mostly. They looked at him, like they were expecting something before he found something else to say. He taught Konohamaru the Rasengan and the Shadow Clone, but it definitely felt much different than it currently was. So, the first thing I learned is how to access my chakra, which I guess is the same thing you should do the tiger hand sign, which is like this, and try to raise it. I don't expect you to access it that easy though. Don't worry Naruto, we'll get it done as quickly as possible, Yahiko declared. Conan nodded in agreement. He fingered the metal piece in his ninja pack. I'm sure you know this by now, but you're given this when you completed shinobi training. He took out Sasuke's headband, with the scratched horizontal line down the entire length. This one belonged to my best friend. He sighed. The others were silent. So he belonged to the hidden leaf. Used to, the line across means that he abandoned it. The two were silent. He never got the chance to get him to return. So I've been thinking, Yahiko started. If we do want be a group, who should be the leader? Oh, we'll all be one, you know, like a company cages, he replied. I just wanted to see if you were on the same page as all, the kid mumbled. Hey, I think you should try and get started on accessing your chakra, so it becomes second nature. Then, well, I'll think of something when we get there. The next couple of weeks continued like that, Conan and Yahiko both attempting to access their chakra. He was still recovering his chakra, which made him frown. It didn't take nowhere near as long, a couple days at most. How long had it been? Weeks. Maybe if you weren't training every day you'll know for sure how long it takes for you to recover, Kurama replied, yawning. I can't help it, I can't really afford to stay rusty in a time like this. Sure, as long as you don't push yourself too hard. Yeah, he retorted. The thing was that he didn't really know what to do, he made sure not to use too much chakra when training. So when he returned from anything physical, he would just stand around, or lay down all day. Often he tried making a one-handed Rasengan, he was able to make one without the help of Kurama or a shadow clone. Except he still needed both hands. There was a lot of downtime, waiting for whenever Nagato should. If he would at all. He wasn't even sure if they were in the location where they would meet Nagato. He was able to steal some rubber balls, some of which was laying around in the cave. Yahiko was playing with one right now, as he laid on his bed and throwing it into the air. He wanted to create a one-handed Rasengan, that was thing that he had always worked on nearly every off day. Just a suggestion, maybe you can try sealing. Kurama stated. I've been thinking that since you seemingly can't sustain quite as long anymore, you might want to try that. It'll give some utility. Sealing ninjutsu, I don't even know a whole of it. Kurama didn't seem to bother replying, perhaps bored with his conversation already. Still it gave him so thought, maybe when his master appeared he could learn. He knew that only some needed hand signs, some with deep concentration, some can be done with only loose amount, others needed to be written. Several techniques required near flawless precision. Some seals needed a long prep time, while others short. Some needed to be done with ink infused with chakra, while others could be done afterwards. The few that required rituals. There was probably too many for him to list. It was all confusing, one that gave him headache. He guessed, however, that he could brush up on his skills with writing, it would get his mind off from just sitting around all day. So he had decided to try and learn sealing ninjutsu. At least at one point. Naruto, what are you doing? He saw Conan looked at him curiously as he sat trying to write. Just practicing my writing, it's for seals. Not to mention that he decided to draw the diagrams of different hand seals. Needless to say his drawing skills really weren't all that much to look at. So he had scrapped the incoherent mess of scribbles before redrawing it, and redrawing it. There was bag of trashed paper at his feet, with both sides drawn with his practice. He thought he was a much better artist than this. Oh, okay, think I can borrow some paper. Go ahead, as he focused on his sloppy writing skills. He definitely needed to work on that, at the very least no crooked lines and curves. The sun had already set, with only a battery-powered lantern lighting it up inside. Yahiko was already asleep, tired from accessing his chakra. They had completed doing that, so he had them stressing their chakra repeatedly. He had compared it to muscles, keep stressing it to build more strength. It most often led to them calling it a night early. He heard the numerous paper folding that Conan did as he practicing putting down lines. Right now, his thoughts were centered around where Killer Bee might be. Perhaps he was somewhere in the warring nations or back at the hidden cloud. Wherever it was, they would likely meet each other at some point. It wasn't like the nations were friendly again. You and Yahiko are plenty alike. Drawing him away to Conan sitting opposite of him. Really? How? He asked. His eye twitched as he messed up a line on the paper. You two look alike, and agree with the same things. Although, he's not that great of a talker. He blinked. He was most likely agree with whatever Yahiko would say, simply because he wanted Nagato to come. He looked quizzically at her, but she didn't elaborate. Instead, she slid a origami of a crane to him. I wanted to thank you for being a friend. With all the thoughts on seals, he wondered if all her paper was a product of seals, or maybe it was more like those puppets. That's pretty cool. There was no way in hell he could ever figure out stuff like that. He carefully inspected the piece. He never really got any gifts before, other than his father. The only other thing he ever got from someone was from Hinata and Aruka. Some medicinal cream container that was lost from Pain's attack, and the forehead protector some weeks before. He lost both of them now. I'm glad you like it, my mother taught me. She mumbled something about going to bed as he eyed the crane that had settled in front of him. Thoughts about how to preserve such a fragile thing. 2 months later. This scouting run had went terribly wrong. Not only were they cut off from the direction to their camp, but they were completely separated from one another. Makoto didn't have a clue where the hell her other teammates were. She caught her breath, deep rhythmic inhales. The only sound was the constant, loud droppings of rain. She strained to see anything with her sharp eyes, trying to catch any slight offset of moving other than the leaves bouncing from the rain. She tried to hear any sound that was unfamiliar. It was safe for now, as it looked it. She reached into her tool bag and took out a bandage to patch a wound on her arm. Perhaps these events wouldn't have happened if her scouting runs hadn't been pushed further beyond and more frequently, to ensure such a breach would never occur once again. Damn that guy. If he hadn't. She took a calming breath and focused. I can't blame others for my own misfortune. Although a shred of thought still remained, perhaps that if he hadn't infiltrated their camp and made a fool out of everyone, that they wouldn't be in this situation. Their Jonin commander had abandoned them, and had taken the map and compass that would make the trek back more safely and easier. They might have been able to find their way back by memory, but they were being relentlessly chased by enemy shinobi. Their little scouting party had grown by 2, a single genin and chunin. One that Makoto knew, Akira. They had grown a little closer in friendship in the month that they worked together. Despite their grown size, they were completely outmatched and outnumbered to compete with the enemy shinobi. They had been completely caught off guard and they had met with a fatality along with 2 others were injured. They had encountered with another larger scouting force, or an infiltrating force, it didn't really matter at the moment. They had been cut off from their retreat toward their camp and their Jonin had left them for dead. She cursed her captain, wishing he would die a painful death. With the bleeding on her arm halted with the bandage, she was able to start moving before their sensory shinobi zoned in on her location.